Singaporeans will go to the polls on July 10th in an extraordinary general election due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The widely anticipated announcement came earlier this afternoon as President Halimah Yacob dissolved Parliament and issued the writ of election.
Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong said in a speech earlier that holding an election now when things are relatively stable will clear the decks and give the new government a fresh mandate to lead the country out of the current crisis.
This general election will be like no other that we have experienced. Not just because of the special arrangements to deal with COVID-19, but because of the gravity of the situation and the issues at stake. The government that you elect will have critical decisions to make. These decisions will impact your lives and livelihoods and shape Singapore for many years to come, far beyond the 5-year term of the next government. Soon, you will have the chance to decide whom to entrust with the responsibility of working with you to take our country forward. I have every confidence that you will think carefully and vote wisely to secure our lives, our jobs, and our future.
Nomination day will be on June 30th, a Tuesday, just a week from today. This will be followed by 9 days of campaigning before cooling off day on July the 9th. Polling day on the 10th will be a public holiday, and on that day, around 2.65 million voters will be heading to the polls, an increase of around 193,000 at the 2015 election.
At stake are 93 seats in Parliament in 17 GRCs and 14 SMCs. That's up from 89 seats after changes to electoral boundaries in March. Changes to the Constitution in 2016 will also guarantee that there will be at least 12 opposition MPs in Parliament if there are fewer than 12 elected opposition members. Non-constituency MPs will also have full voting rights.
As the threat of COVID-19 looms over this GE, safe distancing rules will be in place, such as not having more than 5 people in a group at any one time. This means that traditional campaign staples like mass rallies cannot be held. Political parties also have to scale back on the scope of their walkabouts, as we saw this past weekend.
However, candidates can turn to cyberspace and social media to get their messages across to the electorate. As announced by the Elections Department last week, each candidate will also get airtime on national television as part of new one-off constituency political broadcasts.
Jobs, the state of the economy and the government's plan to see Singapore through the pandemic and beyond will be prominent issues in this election. To take this discussion further, we're joined by news editor at The Straits Times, Zakir Hussain. So Zakir, let's talk about PM Lee's speech first. What stood out the most for you?
I think it's we've had various steps to the election in the past few weeks. The national broadcasts by 6 ministers, the announcements of new polling guidelines and campaigning rules by the Elections Department. And I think today PM Lee clearly articulated why the government and the People's Action Party needs to go to the polls. I think he painted a picture of the tough environment outside. We're at this stable point in tackling COVID. Cases have come down. We're just emerging from the circuit breaker. But you never know how things might pan out in the coming weeks and months. The external environment is also a bit turbulent, not just US-China tensions, but recently you had sort of tensions at the border between India and China. The regional environment is unclear. And all this requires a government that has strong backing from Singaporeans. And an election, PM Lee said, I think is needed. It's, constitutionally we need to have an election soon. And this is as good a time as any to call for an election.
Right. Zakir, so on that note, is it a good time then to call an election? Because we're in the middle of a pandemic.
That's right. But I think as we saw over the last weekend, malls, parks, were full of people, I think, emerging from the circuit breaker. And although they were encouraged to observe safe distancing rules. In some cases, it wasn't always possible. I think campaign activity and even the measures in place at polling stations are probably going to make this a safe experience for voters. Even details of nomination day proceedings, which are yet to be announced. There's been hints that candidates can only move about in groups of 5. Walkabouts will still be allowed, but it's no longer the case where, a whole GRC's candidates can move around in groups of 10 or 20 at markets and so on. You're going to see a lot of door-to-door activity, small group campaigning. There won't be traditional rallies, but instead there'll be a lot of online activity and engagement. And I think this is quite unique, this election.
Well, Zakir, at the last GE in 2015, the ruling People's Action Party secured 69.9% of the popular vote. Among other factors, analysts have attributed that to policy changes addressing the public's concerns, the feel-good effect from Singapore's 50th birthday, as well as the death of Mr. Lee Kuan Yew that March. Now, under the cloud of COVID-19, how do you think the PAP will perform this time?
I think that's an interesting question. Crisis, elections held during crises years in the past have always seen a flight to safety. 2001, the PAP scored 75% of the vote. 2015, not so much a sense of crisis, but the feel-good factor, they got 69.9%. I think we're probably looking at a result around that range. There's a lot of anxiety and concern over jobs and the economy. People do want, to feel reassured. And I think some of the measures and reassurances that have come about in recent weeks do, I think, address some of the uncertainty and anxieties to a large extent. There are, however, still some sore points. I think, the prospect of unemployment, even questions over immigration policy, these could be issues or considerations at the back of the mind of voters.
Well, we'll hear more from Zak later on in the show. That was our news editor, Zakir Hussain.